As Nigerians prepare to vote for a new set of political leadership early next year, the process of achieving a credible electoral outcome has become a major concern for many stakeholders in the polity and even among the generality of Nigerians. According to the Independent National Electoral Commission, the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, or BVAS for short, is the assured pathway to that outcome. But all things being equal, how much confidence do Nigerians repose in that very system? Arise analyst Kayode Otitoju joins us today. Good afternoon, and let's get straight into it, Mr. Otitoju. This is in essence a conversation about trusting man versus machine, or rather machine versus man. It's an easy conversation to have in the urban areas where a lot of trust has already been put in technology. But let's look at Nigeria from a broad spectrum, the rural areas. Have people been educated enough, and are people ready to trust in technology with regards to securing their vote?
Well, I think INEC has really tried. And for the president to have signed the Electoral Act 2022, which was signed in February this year, INEC has been empowered to use, the card or any other machine that could help in accreditation of voters, and to some extent too, to electronically transmit the results, for public to see. So INEC, apart from the card reader, smart card reader, has now started using the BIVAS, which is the Bimodal Voters Accreditation System. And again, they have brought in IREV, which is INEC Result Viewing Portal. These two machines or devices, when it is well employed, it will engender voters' confidence in the INEC. And it has been tried. For instance, in the election, in the gubernatorial election in Ekiti, on the 18th of June this year, the bimodal was used. I was one of the voters, and with that, I can tell you what I went through. On getting there, on getting to the voting unit, you give your card to the officials, they check and they register. Okay? Now they ask you to thumbprint the BIVAS. You thumbprint in the BIVAS. If your thumbprint doesn't show, or there is grease, maybe on your thumb and whatever, then they will use the BVAS to capture your photograph. And the photograph they capture must be exactly, or you, as contained in the voters' register. Okay? So with that, INEC has been able to handle accreditation electronically, and again, if you have voters card, is it voters card, the PVC, that is not yours, there is no way you can tender it to vote, because you will still undergo the fingerprint. Okay? So in terms of accreditation, INEC has gotten it seamless and correct. Is it only in urban center? No. Polling youths are, distributed around the country and in Ekiti through the urban and rural areas. People voted. Even in the huts and hamlets where there are polling booths, people voted.
I definitely, after reading about the introduction of BVAS and IREV, I think it's definitely something that's worth acknowledging INEC's efforts. But Analysts have also pointed out that this does not mean that elections cannot still be bought, because this system is also subject to cyber attacks. They gave a few suggestions, about 7 of them, but I'll just take 2 at the moment. They said in order for this to act, for the trust, people to actually trust this BVAS system, that what INEC needs to do is implement BVAS software optimization, timely conduct of penetration tests and mock exercises, and increase the processing power of IREV. There are also some other suggestions. My question is, based on how close we are to election, to actually voting, how quickly do you think these suggestions can be implemented so that we can actually see a case where this system might not be compromised?
Yeah, the mock test, like mock exam, when we were still in secondary school, could still be done. In Kenya, it was done 60 days to the election. And we still have over 120 days now to the election. Okay, so it could still be done. And again, the capacity of the server, could be enhanced, because the capacity used at the elections, maybe in Ekiti or Osun or whatever, maybe everything, maybe 32,000 voters sheet, as against over 300,000 that will be required, during the general election. So the INEC must troubleshoot to see whether they have enough capacity to handle the volume of voters sheet, report sheet, like the Form EC 8A at unit level, and the Form EC 8B at ward level. Because all this will be uploaded and they'll be transferred to the viewing portal, which is IRA. I think with determination and the determination again of Professor Mahmood to see that he performs better than Jega, everything will be put in place before the time.
I think we can see that there's definitely great intention towards making sure that this works seamlessly and efficiently. Everybody, would want to join hands to work towards that. But of course, like you rightfully raised, a huge concern about scale. When you look at it being implemented in one state versus nationally, the scalability of that, we can't compare Kenya and Nigeria, for example, in size with regards to population. So, 60-day trial may have been sufficient for Kenya, but when you look at a nation as huge and diverse as Nigeria, you wonder, okay, at what point should this mock rollout start happening? But to move away from that, I recall images from the 2015 general election when at the time President Goodluck Jonathan attempted to vote, and his voting process, I don't know if you remember, that was delayed because the biometrics failed. Technology fails. And in the failure of technology, yes, there are 1 or 2 things that can be done or that can happen. But ultimately, we resort back to human capacity, right? How do you think we can mitigate the propensity for sabotage? We can't put it past it. I feel it's a form of even vote buying, where we say that the technology failed us, quote unquote. The report will say technology failed us. Meanwhile, resources were distributed on ground to make it appear that way, so that manual sheets can be submitted. Do you foresee? It's a tricky political playing around.
We are past that stage. There can't be manual sheet anymore. With the with the BIVAS.
So what do we do when technology fails?
No, it doesn't fail. I told you, when my thumbprint couldn't capture well, okay, they put the BIVAS to capture my image, okay? Before, when President Jonathan, was disappointed with that failure, there was nothing like BIVAS, okay? Once your thumbprint and it doesn't show, they resort to manual accreditation. Now, no. the technology brought in place has really, push aside human interaction with it, and machine has taken over. But there are still some areas, like maybe timely transmitting of the result from BIVAS to the viewing center, to the viewing portal. Okay, they must still work on that and synchronize, because once the BVAS capture your registration and everything, okay, between the time of voting and getting the voting the result into form EC8A, all right, you now use the BVAS again to capture the sheet, the result sheet, which we now transmit to the viewing center. In between that, they were able to rig in Ekiti, because there were other sheets of result that were captured from newly registered voting centers that were not manned by other political parties, but were transmitted to the IVR. Okay? But INEC chairman confessed that there were some things, teething problems we encountered in Ekiti, but we were able to solve them before Osun. That's within 1 month. One of the things they were able to look into was voting at newly created voters that are only known to the government of the day, not known to new party like SDP. You get my point?
Yes, gotcha.
So, and that was where, on several occasions, even in Ekiti, I said that there was a margin that was input into the result, different from the actual captured BVAD result. And that margin was significant.
Mr. Otitoju, another thing that actually...
Now, in terms of, then you mentioned the volume, that when we're comparing with Kenya, okay, yeah, Nigeria already knows that they are handling about 96 million voters, that are already registered, okay? And so they make ready and preparation for the manpower and the training on how to use this new machine. So the bigger the head, the greater the headache.
Okay. One of the things that actually appears to be a frustration for INEC, we saw, for instance, a case where the litigation instituted by the Imo State High Court seeking a restraining order against the electoral body to suspend the deployment of BVAS for the general election. If we see a replica of situations like this, how can INEC get past this by wanting to ensure that everything is, relatively free, fair, and transparent? But when we have situations like this, how do they get past it?
Well, I think to some extent, INEC and the National Assembly had done a big job by having the Electoral Act 2022 signed by Mr. President. That's taking care. All these things are just skirmishes that we hold no water. For instance, when they knew that the governor or the government of Imo State was trying to have more than, known to other parties, number of newly created polling units, Ikanga, the chairman of the Association of Political Parties, cried out. And when he cried out, and they knew that actually it's only the well-known polling units that will be used, then they resorted into going on litigation to stop BIVAS. Because with BIVAS, you can't rig. You can't. In terms of accreditation, you must get accredited before you can vote. And the accreditation is by BVAS, which will either capture your fingerprint or your face or both. Are you with me?
Yeah.
I don't know whether there will be failure of the BVAS, but I don't think so, in the sense that INEC knows, they are on watch list of Nigerians. And the difference between, there are about 18 political parties that are participating. And each and every is serious. Though not all of them will have capacity to have representation or representative at the polling units, but at least the 3 or 4 big ones will make sure that they have their polling agents. So let me use this medium to say that if you want to stop rigging at the polling unit, because the power is now at the polling unit, just make sure that you have your polling agents as a political party at every polling unit on the day of election.
Mr. Otitoju, I'm glad you mentioned the Coalition of United Political Parties earlier, the CUPP, because amongst, they've said a lot and they've thrown a lot of allegations against various people. And one of those very serious allegations being that the BVAS database has already been hacked with profiles, false profiles, that profiles have been tampered with, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Again, allegations. We haven't seen any official submissions made to INEC. But let's look into that, because again, we're looking at loopholes, right? From a cyber end of things, it is very much possible for people to create these fake profiles and fake accounts and somehow be able to submit them into the database. I'm not sure whether that would now mean they have to fly in all of these fake human beings to come and register on the day, but I'm sure there's an intricate plan around it. But what about looking at that situation? Do you really think that we're in a position to be able to stop that from happening? So rigging before the election, which is us creating fake accounts that will eventually count in our favor on the day.
I believe, and I surely believe, that INEC must have put enough money in training and again in acquiring machines that could counter all this. Because anything you are doing, just know that there are people who are at times ahead of you to frustrate. Even with your POS card or something like that. If care is not taken, you just see that your money is gone. Transfer to account that you never knew. So there are always this, and the ability to simulate what could happen and be ahead of your enemy is very, very important. And I think INEC is doing this, because I was really surprised and, surprisingly, happy when the INEC chairman said that, there was something the hackers tried to hack into the result and whatever, but in little or no time we were able to be ahead of them. So there will always be problem. May your path be rough so that you will be able to bring energies to make your path be smooth.
Well, thank you so much, Arise News analyst, Mr. Kayode Otitoju. We appreciate your time and analysis, as always.